All right, let's do it. Welcome to this episode of the Conservative Coalition. I'm here with Veronica. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So this is a special stream because there was a recent Facebook debate that I had on Facebook. Veronica was nice to help me with some of my arguments, and we're gonna deconstruct what leftists think about abortion, go over some facts, and really try to dive deep into how they think. And it's very important as you debate people in person on stupid mediums like Facebook, Twitter, and you need to remember that you always need to be accurate. Facts don't care about your feelings, and always be respectful and polite.
Except when you can be fun.
Yes. So throughout this, we'll probably stop this momentarily to gather any questions that you have on a particular topic that we're discussing. But we're going to go through the entire Facebook argument. And we don't worry, the names of the deceased will not be shared. I will respect their privacy. We got 3 people on the stream now. Let's get started. So, how this all started was this lady on Facebook said that, or posted a video saying that Trump wants to get rid of Roe v. Wade and he wants to go after and shame people who had abortions. Now, any person with 2 cents of a brain will know that the executive branch doesn't have this power, and we have checks and balances in our government to prevent stupidity like this. Yes, Trump is a very centric person. He will say stupid things sometimes, but he never follows through on them, and he's usually works it out in the end, which is good. Don't you agree, Veronica?
Yes, I think problem that the lefty pro-abortion side, they try to make anyone who doesn't agree with that stance look like a bad person just by saying, "Oh, you want to shame women. Oh, you want to punish women," and they try to make it emotional and not factual. You know,
Exactly. So my comment for that stupid video was abortions will still be legal if Roe v. Wade is terminated. All Roe v. Wade said was that, or when Roe v. Wade started, uh, abortions were. Let me start over. No, so I asked her, what is wrong with getting rid of Roe v. Wade? Abortion will still be legal, but left to the states to decide. Personally, I think Roe v. Wade is unconstitutional and violates the 14th Amendment, which says no,
constitutional was a religion.
no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. So I'm pretty sure that the leftist judges that passed this really were biased in this, don't you?
Yes, they were biased, and I think the issue is that they said that abortion was under the right to privacy, which is stupid. Like there this is just it's just poor reasoning. You can say that anything illegal or immoral is private, and then what? Then the state can't do anything about it? That's ridiculous. And you're absolutely right. All it would do would be to kick it back to the states. So your first comment was something that should have been agreed with. So what did she respond to your first comment with?
Okay, here we go. I wish I had my leftist tears tumbler. Um, so she says pro-choice does not
Blowing, making a mess.
mean.
Gotta
She says pro-choice does not mean pro-abortion. It's that period a choice. The opportunity to do with your own body what is right for your life should be available across the board. Sometimes this means not bringing another life into the world if you aren't in a position to care for it, which could be far more detrimental in the scheme of things. How dare that uh, expletive grabbing immoral puppet think it'd be okay to only punish the woman. He and who appoints to important seats are pushing us back decades. So
Oh my God,
one,
still going? Because
oh
that
yeah,
because what she said did not address what you said at all. You said something factual that had to do about even if Roe v. Wade was overturned, that would mean this. And then
hmm
she all the way over here, which had nothing to do with it. One thing when you're arguing and discussing with people, you have to keep them on topic, which for leftists, for many people, it's frustrating because they go off in their emotions and they're emotional about it and they aren't able to focus on what's actually being discussed. So already she's off topic and she
yes,
didn't get the argument. So how did you and her argument is incorrect anyway. What did she say? Say that again. She said something about what to do with her own body.
yeah. Pro-choice does not mean pro-abortion. It's that a choice, the opportunity to do with your own body is right. Your life should be available across the board. Sometimes it means not bringing a life into this world. So
So
throughout,
wait. So first she says the right to do with your own body, and then she says sometimes that means not bringing another life into the world. So she says her body, and then she says another life. So she's saying that it's a life, which I did read. You sent this to me earlier, so I did look at it briefly. So later on, she's going to try and say that it's not a life, but she has already said that it is a life.
mhm.
And she has differentiated between her body and the other life's body. So, I mean, I suppose it's an unfortunate fact of biology that babies, that most mammals um, grow their babies inside of their own body. But if you have that, if you have a problem with that, you can take that up with God or with evolution. But it's a fact of life, and it's not going to change because you don't like it. It's a separate. It is a separate body. It's not your body, and to insist on anything else is just denial of science.
Yes. Throughout this, I tried to be intellectually honest and try to keep her intellectually honest and avoid religion at all because if you bring into religion, you will lose the argument right away with them. They will dismiss you. So, with that being said, she says,
Okay,
you
so
consider it murder. I don't. Its cells are forming, and I do not agree that there should be a limit to how far in this gestation period can lapse before saying it's too late to terminate. But the fact is, all should be given this choice. It should not be a state by state case. Roe v. Wade, giving it back to the states. By doing this, we'd open up for more coming back alley abortions, which are proved more deadly for women. It's very difficult for women in some states to get one, and now the idea of making it impossible unless they travel across state lines, hoping their neighboring state can accommodate, won't be punished. Oh my God, where it's even more unacceptable. So, when you get pregnant, you have, or when you engage in sexual activity, you have four options: adoption, pregnancy, contraception, and adoption.
well,
You have op-
there's also abstinence. You gotta go in order. So your first
yes.
choice is to not have the sex. That's your first choice. Your
Mm-hmm.
second choice, if you're going to have the sex, you can use contraception. So you can use a condom or you can use one of those internal thingies.
IUDs or something.
Yeah, they're so creepy. Or so abortion, some kind of contraception, and then once you do get pregnant, if you get pregnant, you can choose to become a parent and accept the responsibility of the consequences of your actions. So yeah, you made a choice and these are the consequences of your choice. So what abortion is really about is just about avoiding the consequences of your choices.
Yes,
And
and there's also something called emergency contraception where you have up to 3 days to take this pill, and then you probably won't get pregnant.
yes,
If you,
and There are forms of that pill. I've researched it that it's not actually terminating um, the baby, it's just preventing fertilization from happening. So there is an ethical way to do that. So it's abstinence, contraception, parenthood, adoption, and I would argue for a fifth one. There's sterilization. So if you want to be like that, get your tubes tied. If you want to be like that, get a vasectomy. You know, because then you really are only dealing with your body and not someone else's.
Exactly. As this progressed, I wanted to put a face to this so you can actually see the fetal development cycle for a child. And I submitted a picture and I'd asked her, where on this chart is it okay to terminate this baby?
Well, didn't she say in the other comment that she can you read the last comment? She said something about it is a group of cells, but she doesn't think it's a life or something like that.
She goes,
It was very long and very wordy and very off topic, so it was a little hard to follow.
sure, its cells are forming, and I do agree there should be a limit to how far into gestation period can lapse before saying it's too late to terminate, but it's a choice. Yeah.
Oh
So,
yeah, and then wait, that was the other thing. She said that she didn't consider it to be murder. Well, let's look at the dictionary definition of murder. And this is something that is another thing. So, the dictionary says murder is the unlawful premeditated killing of one human being by another. I would argue that it's just the premeditated killing of one human being by another
mhm,
because if if I don't think that the legality is I don't care about it being legal or illegal. If tomorrow it became legal for you to kill people over 80, it would still be murder. You know what I mean? And I do hear a lot of people, they say, well, it's legal, so it's not murder. It's like, yes, it is. There have been immoral things that have been legal. That doesn't change anything. It's
right.
still it's still immoral. And it
So,
is
right,
still it's just you calling it something different doesn't change what it actually is.
yeah. Earlier, I said I wanted to keep her intellectually honest and having this discussion, and it was a nice discussion until we get into later when her friends jumped in the conversation. So, what science tells us, and we'll show sources in a bit, that life begins at conception. When the sperm fertilizes the egg, the process of life starts.
Yes.
So, therefore, when you get knocked up, it's alive. And Veronica just said that murder is illegal. We can all agree, any moral person will agree that you shouldn't kill the innocent.
Or anybody, really.
Yeah. So that being said, I showed the fetal development chart, and I said, so where on this chart do you think it's okay to end a life? Women do not need back alley abortions. If raped, they can take Plan B, as we just discussed. There's also adoption, pregnancy as choices. And Roe v. Wade went beyond extreme medical scenarios, which is not needed. So Roe, after this happened, it's quite disturbing. Women would come up to her all the time on the street and saying, "Hey, I had a whole bunch of abortions," and stuff like that. And then she started to have second thoughts on this. And in 2003, she had a complete change of heart after more data showed that abortions hurt women, and many women end up regretting the decision. Her intent was to never have people just have willy-nilly abortions. And if you watch leftist protests, you'll see them say like, "Oh, I abort my babies. Oh, I love abortion." And that's really not the intent. It should be rare. You should never use it as plan A.
Yes, but I think that was just a talking point to get it passed. The left is really good at pushing narratives and selling stories. So they're like, oh, well, people don't really want abortions. We just want it to be safe and legal and rare. They never really wanted it to be safe and legal and rare. They always wanted it to be on demand. And if there's nothing wrong with abortion, if it's not immoral, then why does it need to be safe, legal, and rare? Like
Yeah,
why does it need to be rare? Like I get okay, safe, okay, but why does it need to be rare if there's nothing wrong with it?
exactly.
You know what I mean?
So I'm going to show you the fetal development chart. Bear with me. So on your screen right now, you should see the fetal development chart. According in this Facebook drama war, she goes, my real answer is 12, but for the sake of your chart, I will say week 8. I know how contraception works. Thank you. Most women are not just having willy-nilly abortions. Well, I just confirmed to you earlier that they do. Watch any leftist protest or pro-choice movement.
But did you say why? Like 8 versus 12?
Yeah. So getting to that, um, let's look at what 8 is. They have ears, partially formed genitals, ears, teeth, eyes, and most importantly, they have a heart that's keeping them alive. And that starts in week 3. Let me switch back to the stream really quick. So, that being said, life begins at conception. Murder is wrong. The baby is has a heart, and you just think it's okay to just kill it. That's a potential life right there.
No, it is alive. It is
Yeah.
alive. If
I
you
mean,
go,
in their
I
terms.
isn't that it is alive.
Yeah.
So I just Googled characteristics of living things, and all living things have common traits irrespective of plants and animals. So all living things have cells. They use energy for the development of their bodies. They experience growth. They reproduce to continue their species life. Um, so they plants and animals have a reproductive system which is completely developed at puberty. Every living thing is organized, so organization, and death. So all living things die. And other characteristics of living things are movement and homeostasis, which is the process to maintain stable internal conditions for survival. So a fetus, which the only thing fetus means is an unborn offspring of a mammal, in particular, an unborn human baby, more than 8 weeks after conception. So that's all a fetus means. It is a living thing. Like it demonstrates it has all the characteristics of living things. So it is absolute science denial to say that it is not a living thing or that it's not a human. So anyone who is arguing that point is intellectually dishonest. And personally, when I'm having that discussion, I don't let them take the conversation further. I always go back to that one thing. You
Hmm.
know, no, we can't move on if we can't move on unless we get this one thing that's at the foundation. We can't move on till we get this right. So let's work on this before you go into left field and right field and everything else where they want to go into their back alleys. Um, so I always return to the first talking point, which makes them very frustrated, but I don't care.
Yeah. So she goes, where are you getting your info from? I don't mean about the development stages, but proud, willy nilly abortion having women. Well, look at any women's movements and you'll see that. And I wanted to show her exactly where I got my information from. So I'm going to switch to where life begins. You should see that on your screen now. And this is coming from a prestigious university
Which is,
called Princeton.
oh,
You
I've heard
may,
of that.
yeah, me too. They didn't accept me. And let's just read one of them and all these sources, shall we? Development of the embryo begins at stage 1 when a sperm fertilizes the I'm not a scientist, and together they form a zygote. This is the baby forming. Okay. And there's so many more quotes from scientific sources that you can just read and get the information yourself. I posted this. Did it work? No, because
No,
we're having a feelings based debate here.
it's not going to work because they don't care. You know, like the reason why they get upset when you show photos of an abortion or you say, "Well, have you seen an abortion?" Well, here, look at this, is because they know that their perspective can only live in the darkness. That's why they say, "Oh, it's just a clump of cells. It just looks like a ball." They hide information, so they know what the truth is. They just don't like the truth and they aren't willing to accept it. So it doesn't matter if you hit them with fact after fact. They're going to say, "Well, regardless, I still think this," because they don't care. you
Yeah,
know like it's unlikely, like, that whoever you're talking to, it's unlikely that you'll change that person's mind, but somebody watching you guys interact and discuss it, maybe it will change their mind. But a lot of these people, they've already had it, their minds made up. I mean, we've seen it with like Steven Crowder's Change My Mind and other things. When you talk to people about abortions and you say, "Okay, so let's make a deal. Let's outlaw all abortions except the ones that have to do with rape or incest. Will that be okay?" They still say no. You know what I mean? Like, they don't care. And I looked up this study from the Guttmacher. How do you ever say that? Guttmacher Institute.
sure.
Um,
Guten Macke. Ah.
this is from Arnold. Yeah, this is from 2005. So it's volume 37, issue 3, and it's called "Reasons U.S. Women Have Abortions: Quantitative and Qualitative Perspectives." 74% of the reasons were that a child would interfere with a woman's education, work, or ability to care for dependents, or that she could not afford a baby now, um, or that she didn't want to be a single mother or was having relationship problems. Fewer than 1% said that their parents or partners' desire for them to have an abortion was the most important reason. And younger women often reported that they were unprepared for the transition into motherhood. So it's about shirking responsibility. They want to have all the fun of sex when they're not ready for all the responsibilities of
All the
sex.
giggity and none of the dignity.
Yes.
Uh, Another reason why people want to get abortions, and I think we're going to touch on this in a little bit, but little intro. If your child has mental handicap, Down syndrome, or any other type of disability, and
Did she, when you guys were talking?
yeah, and also people get abortions. It was just outlawed in Canada. Wrong gender, wrong wrong race. I mean, what? How do you know the race of your child? I don't know. But
Like,
does
we're
that
used to
make them? Does that make them any less of a life?
race. Like, don't you know who you had sex with?
Yes,
Makes you
but your
wonder.
partner might not.
Maybe not.
Oh, Cody, our co-host, just joined in. How you doing, Cody?
Not too bad. Sorry for being late. My room's under construction right now, so I'm actually on my cell phone, just trying to join in and do my part. So how have you guys been doing tonight?
Just
Pissed off.
peachy.
Yeah. So well, and the argument that they use for that is that cool, my wife cheated on me with someone else, and we're like, let's say both white, and she cheated on me with like an Asian guy, and then the baby is like the person is like, well, yeah, the baby's gonna be Asian, and I'm like, well, you cheated on me. That's their argument for aborting that scenario.
Yeah. Well, I feel like all of these things are interesting, but they get off topic because the point is that the
Yes.
baby is a separate human life, and you do not have the right to kill it just out of your convenience. Because oh, it would because it would be a financial burden, or because it's you just don't want to, or it would interfere with your career. Well, if you want to be a liberated big girl feminist, then you need to accept the fact that um, your actions, your choices have consequences. So, and you have to deal with that. That's what being an adult is about. And it's really weird, this leftist thing where they want to be a child and they want to be like a adult child hybrid. So they want all the fun of adulthood, but they want all the
None of the
responsibility of
responsibility.
a child. They want the government to take care of them. They
Yeah.
want the government to pay for all their stuff while they're off having having fun. It's very odd and selfish and immature. But I tend to try and not let um I just I try to keep um I try to keep the argument there. It's like it's a human, you don't get to kill it. And they're like, but what if no? Well, what about no? And if in the cases of rape and incest, that's a horrible thing to happen. The victim should be in counseling, and you can get counseled through pregnancy and then to give your child up for adoption. And there have been people who have had women who have had their babies out of those situations, and they've grown to love their child, and they see like this was a horrible thing that happened to me, but now I have this son or daughter who I love so much, and and that's um that's a beautiful thing. But the baby doesn't get punished for something that's not his or her fault.
Yeah.
Um, and also, those are very few cases. It's like less than 3% of abortions are for those reasons. And also, if you think about it, if a woman has been so traumatized because rape is very traumatic, do you really think that she's in a mental position to make that big of a decision? To kill her child or not? Like, is she really mentally prepared for that after going through that trauma? Like, is she really in a position to make that decision? I would argue no.
So in 1973, they actually did a study on this. Less than 1% of abortions were the result of rape or incest.
Oh,
And
it's not one? Okay.
yeah, today it's 1.5%. But the majority of those, like in the 90 percentile for that very small amount of people, gave several other reasons why they wanted to get an abortion besides the fact that it was a product of rape or incest, similar to the reasons that you gave earlier. To put in that perspective, there have been 5.5 million abortions just in the last 10 years,
Wow.
and 55 million since the first study was done in 73. So 55 million, and less than 1% of them are the uh, reasons that the left gives primarily for the reason that we should have abortion continue to be legal. So
Yeah.
we're going to make laws for the 1% now.
Well, if you think about it, they're making laws for the 1% regarding
Yeah.
everything.
But these are the same people
Like
who hate the 1%.
less than 3% of the population. It's such a small amount, and all they focus on are is that small thing because it's a story. It's a story, and it sells.
Yes. But what about handicapped kids, disabilities? What makes them less of a life? And remember, we agreed by science that life begins at conception. So how is it
Yeah.
okay to kill these kids?
Yeah. I actually saw a comment of, but man, I wish I could find it. I should have pulled it up earlier, but it was it was by a woman who had been like she'd had a hard life. She'd been I think she had a single mother family and she grew up abused and like horrible life. But she was saying that she liked her life, and yeah, it was hard, but she likes that it's part of who she is and she survived and she got through it. And she said that she wanted people to stop using her and people like her as a as the poster kids for their agenda. Like, stop saying that um, that she would have been better off dead than having gone through a hard life. You know, Beethoven had a horrible life, growing up. He had a very hard childhood. Um, but think about how empty the world would be without all of his wonderful music. You
What were
know,
some of the options that you were talking about earlier to
um,
avoid the kid having a hard life with a crappy parent?
um, first of all, don't have sex until you're ready to be a parent. And
Mm-hmm.
if you screw that up, that's you, and now you need to take the responsibility. And there have been people who, they messed up and they took the responsibility and either got married and raised their kid and now they've got a beautiful family, or they raised their kid as a person, or they adopted their kid out and now these people have this wonderful child they've adopted. Like there's a lot of options, but the first thing is to have some self-control. you know it's not that difficult. And I think that it shows the priority of our nation that they'll put sexual gratification above everything, to the point of pretending that a life isn't a life and that
Mm-hmm.
murder isn't murder. you
Yes.
know it's kind of silly. It's actually disgusting, but anyway.
There's some good points next. Oh, sorry, you want to say something, Cody?
Yeah, actually, on your discussion with the lady who made the comments,
Did
that
this?
had, yeah. So there was an individual named Frank Stevens, and you guys have probably seen him as a meme. He's got Down syndrome. It's very obvious. You can tell because Down syndrome leaves very smoothed out facial features. But Frank Stevens came up and did a speech on Down syndrome and living with it, and uh, he made the point several times, and I'm quoting him directly here. I am a man with Down syndrome, and my life is worth living. I am a man with Down syndrome, and it does not define me, and I deserve to live.
Mm.
Yep.
Good story on this. When women are, I think, 1 to 3 months pregnant, they'll get a test. I forgot what it's called. And they'll test for Down syndrome, and they'll give you a percentage at your risk. My daughter was very high risk of Down syndrome, and then I was a leftist back then. I was just thinking, well, I don't want to bring someone with Down syndrome into this world. It would be terrible for us and them. But then we're like, screw it. It's a
It's
life.
called the quad screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we felt very terrible that we were going to end a life that's forming inside her. The tummy's forming. It's sticking out. There's something inside there, something
Yeah.
living, and just to get rid of it.
Yeah. What's disgusting to me is when they try to play, they even when they're making this decision, they try to play the victim card. They're like, oh, well, I didn't feel good about it. Like, it made me sad to kill my own child, but I did it anyway. Like, like it's an they make it a story. They're good with narratives. They're good with selling emotions. Um,
Yeah, and of course, this is 20 minutes after they say that they didn't abort a life; they aborted a fetus. That
Mm-hmm.
they did
yeah,
nothing wrong.
switch it. They switch it, and it doesn't make any sense. It's like, okay, so right now I'm happy I'm pregnant, so I'm gonna invite you guys to my baby shower, but tomorrow I'm not gonna like it so much, so
Oh.
then I'm gonna just decide that it's not. And
What do I do with the gifts?
Yeah, do
so
you keep them or return them?
So four. There's 7 points we need to get to that was in one comment, and we got to dive deep into this. I'm going to take care of the first one because Veronica pretty much hit this. If you didn't catch her and our other special guest Dana in the other abortion video or video about abortion, please check it out on our channel. But the first comment is, you claim to promote the use of Plan B, but if you truly believe that life begins at conception, it's in quotes, bear with me, then you would also think that this was murder. So you have to admit that you're wrong about life starting at conception, or you're BSing about the condoning the use of Plan B. Well, as Veronica said, and we said in our last video, it prevents fertilization. No life is being ended. There's a Plan B Then there's an actual abortion pill, which can kill you as a side effect, make you ill. Well, everybody gets made ill, and it basically kills the baby inside you, and it flushes out of your hoo hoo. So Plan B prevents fertilization. It's cool. It's Gucci. Number two, since you want to talk science, saying that life begins at conception is ridiculous. Well, it's not.
Yeah,
Um,
we've already that. Yes, it does.
cells are not equivalent to human life. Cells begin at undifferentiated and are literally an unspecialized mass of cells. And then they say they're incapable of doing any basic functions, and they go through the process of a specialization, which takes weeks. So, how's taking Plan B, again, Plan B, any different than having an abortion? Well, it's not. We're not going to say it again. And life begins at conception. Science says it. You guys have anything to add on this?
I did just go through that article about the characteristics of a living thing, and it goes through step by step. It growth, cells, growth, homeostasis, movement, and all those things are happening. And once the sperm fertilizes the egg, and then um, uh, uh, the new DNA is formed, like it's separate new DNA. This is new human DNA. It's a new thing. It's a new person. Um, there's a there is an article on liveaction.org, and it's called Science is Clear. Each new human life begins at fertilization. It's from 2013, and it uh, takes quotes from scientific textbooks and journal articles, um, basically saying when human life begins. The zygote formed by the union of an oocyte and a sperm is the beginning of a new human being. A zygote, fertilized egg, is the beginning of a new human being. Human development begins at fertilization, the process during which a male gamete unites with a female gamete or oocyte to form a single cell called a zygote. This highly specialized totipotent cell marks the beginning of each of us as a unique individual. Like, it's the science is there. If you want to deny it, fine, but you're wrong. What's her next point?
Did you have anything to add on that, Cody?
Yeah. So I hear the argument a lot that yeah, the when you're first impregnated, it's not a life because it can't do basic functions and this and that. Well, to be completely honest, even modern day humans are the exact same cells. They've just been replaced that they were when they were developing in the womb. Um, a lot of those cells had a different purpose, mainly development and formation of your body, your genetics, which stay in you until you're dead and turn into goop in a casket, or if you get cremated, whatever it may be. But the easiest argument I have against that point, and there's you really just cannot say this clear enough, because and I actually posted this earlier, and nobody had a response to this. Um, if you watch anything that lays an egg and it lays those eggs and something tries to take those eggs, the parents will fend those eggs for their life. They will protect them until they die. They will not abandon them. That means that snakes and mongoose and other animals that try to primarily eat eggs have a very difficult time getting to them. Even chickens will try to attack people, something that's 13 times their size, from taking their eggs at day one. Um, the animals would not do that if the egg was not considered a life to them. It was not considered their child. They wouldn't care. Um, and chickens, for a perfect example, because everybody knows what the inside of a chicken egg looks like. I'm sure everybody here has had an omelet, right?
I'm vegan.
Um, well, after about 7 days, the beak begins to form. There's already a heart, and then after about 9 or 10 days, you start seeing the gestation internal organs and the vascular system, veins, arteries, capillaries, that kind of thing. So the argument that from day one that it's not a life because it can't do things is made inert by the fact that you're still the same clump of cells you were when you were born. There's just more of them. And that things that even have babies outside of the womb that are not developed until they're outside of the womb, like eggs, still protect them as if they were already born and walking around. Right? They get more protection than most things that are live births. Alligators will literally let their newborn young go hunting on their own, for example. Like straight out the womb, they go hunting fish. So a chicken or a bird feeds those eggs and takes care of them in the nest for up to months, depending on the bird, sometimes even a year before they finally kick them out of the nest, which is their womb.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but because humans are different and we have the ability to reason, we can reason ourselves away from basic basic innate truths and facts that we all know. You know, we all know deep inside that this is true. You know, but people can reason away from that, which is an is interesting fact of human nature. But that's another conversation.
Okay. I'll have to read this exactly how it was written. So all these points that we're going over are classic leftist talking points. No one wants have an abortion. Women have abortions because they're physically, mentally, or financially incapable of either having or raising a baby. Having an abortion is an invasive and painful experience, and not to mention trauma. Well, yeah, if you see like I said before, if you watch leftist movements, they love abortions. They love saying how many abortions they had and saying that they kill their babies.
Yeah, but if it's so painful and traumatic, why would you want women to go through that? Like if she's saying that it's a painful, horrible thing, okay, then why do you want it to be a thing?
Yeah.
And it's yet another feel-good tactic. There are no factual bases behind it. Um, One of the most uncomfortable experiences I had in high school, I had to do a report on abortion, for abortion stance in high school in English class, and I went through the procedure of a third trimester abortion, um, which is, even thinking about it now, it does not sit well with me. The way they do that is very grotesque and very inappropriate, but it's the only way they can do a third trimester abortion. And I kind of embarrassed myself. I teared up and I almost started crying in front of the entire class because I started to realize that people actually do this. But the females that were in my class were unfazed. A few of the males in my class came to me afterwards and were like, "Do they really do that? Like that's disgusting."
That is the fact that they're unfazed is very disturbing.
Well, and it doesn't help that two of the female high school students in my classroom were pregnant at the time at 16. So, yeah. And they, even those two, were completely unfazed by what I said, as if I was just trying to like make them angry for saying it, because they were talking about getting an abortion.
Hmm.
Wow. All right. Maybe you guys can explain this to me. Pro-choice is not pro-abortion. It's a woman's right to choose what happens to her body. Is this just a talking point, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
So if you have you can choose abortion if you're not pro-choice, you're pro-life. Come on.
Well, the abortion is the only choice they care about. It really is.
Hmm.
They don't care about the other ones because anytime you want to suggest something else, all hell breaks loose.
Hmm.
both sides use terms for their stance that are supposed to mitigate um, the negative reaction to saying it. Kind of like, so, okay, pro choice. That does not mean that you want a woman to do what she wants with her body in general. I don't care if a woman wants to use a enema or to pick her nose. I don't care. I'm not going to stop her from doing those things. But in reality, pro choice means pro abortion. Pro
Yeah.
life doesn't just mean we don't want anybody to die. I'm for the death penalty. What it really means is I am anti abortion. So if we were to put those two stances without the shrouds around them, it would be pro-abortion, anti-abortion. That is the topic, and that is the only thing that surrounds that topic. It's not about taking away or giving women more rights or less rights. It's about whether or not abortion in itself is inherently a good thing and whether or not it should be legal. Arguing any other arguing anything else with that conversation is just a feedback loop of general stupidity. People who can't make a good argument for abortion try to say, "Well, you're sexist because you don't want women to choose." Well, no, I don't want a woman to kill my baby. That's what I don't want.
Yeah, don't even. I mean, and I think this is coming up. This is coming up later in one of the later comments that this female said. Um,
Yeah.
um, was that basically Philip can't say anything because he doesn't get
No, no,
pregnant.
no, don't spoil it yet. Don't spoil it. Let's go
Well,
to the next.
he mentioned the whole "I don't want you to be able to kill my child," and it is a shame that the man has no say in whether or not his child gets killed. It's not fair.
Yes. The next leftist talking point is the same legislators who would overturn Roe v. Wade are the same legislators who support doctors and pharmacists being able to deny providing contraceptives based on religious beliefs. So I'm curious, what are all these other options you are talking about?
Wait, what?
The same legislators who would overturn Roe v. Wade are the same legislators who support doctors and pharmacists being able to deny providing contraceptives based on religious beliefs. That's called the First Amendment. Companies can not support birth control in their insurance plans. Look at the Hobby
Wait,
Lobby case.
did she?
Some
Did she just say doctors can't give? Well, she said what? She said that
legislators
doctors
who
Her,
support doctors and pharmacists being able to deny contraceptives.
doctors and pharmacists denying. Do you go to the doctor or the pharmacist to get a contraceptive? So you're talking about pills, not condoms, right? No, because if you go to the doctor and you get a pill,
yeah, we're
that's
talking about Plan C and abortion. They're making the same argument against that happened with the cake bakers, that they were Christian and they did not want to support a gay wedding, so they said we're not going to
yeah.
make you a gay cake. Um,
Okay. You don't want if they don't want to give it to you, just go to the one across the street and get one.
exactly.
And this is more about the Hobby Lobby case. They didn't want to offer contraception or what was it, women's birth control as a under their coverage, and the First Amendment protects them from that.
I don't understand why birth control is under healthcare. It's not really healthcare. It's you know what I mean? It's not like your diabetes medicine. It's just something optional that you choose to do. I
To
don't
not get
understand
pregnant.
if you decide to be sexually active, why can't you take that financial burden upon yourself? If you want to do it, you go pay for it. I don't understand. Like that's you're an adult. Pay for your own stuff.
And not to mention, you can get it over the counter. Like literally, I think the last time I looked at it, it was $5 for a 30-day supply, and that's your birth control pill.
Yeah. I feel
Cheaper than abortion.
like it's a little humble bragging too. It's like really you
Yeah.
can't afford. It's like I'm
Yeah,
just doing it. I'm just tired that I just can't keep up with this financially. I need the state to take care of this. Okay.
I mean, to argue that if you can go and have and I'm not accusing anybody of anything here. I know I'm guilty of it myself. If you can go out and have lots of sex with people and think that abortion might be necessary, the guy is usually the one that buys the condoms. Condoms are expensive. It's three for about six to $10 depending where you're at.
Really?
Which means birth control is cheaper. It's good to use them both in tandem. Just
I don't
because a woman says she's on birth control doesn't mean I'm not using a condom.
Mhm.
seriously, you can get like a giant pack for like $20 at Walmart or whatever. I'm sure they have a jumbo pack at Costco that's super cheap too.
Yes, and it's I think at Walmart it's 10 or 20 for $25 or so, depending on the brand. But like, let's say like you weren't planning on it, so the guy stops by a gas station or something, right? They only sell the little 3 packs, and they're always about $5 to $8, depending on what you get.
So the next controversial thing that I said, and you guys may not agree, I said that it's okay for abortion if the mother's life is at risk. And she goes, even then, it's hard. And I said, even then, it's hard to say. And she goes, "You're treading into Handmaid's Tale territory, Philip." They always like to use Handmaid's Tale for some reason. You're always using Handmaid's Tale. You're suggesting that a mother father not have the right to decide whether to have a baby that will surely or likely kill the mother. Sounds a bit contradictory to your whole all life is precious thing.
Also, I found an less than 1% of all abortions are performed to save the life of the mother. Like it's not a thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a thing. You know, it's not a thing. So, uh, hmm, where is it? Dr. Alan Guttmacher, yeah, that's the institute I was just reading the other thing about. So this guy he actually works for Planned Parenthood. So he acknowledged today it is possible for almost any patient to be brought through pregnancy alive, unless she suffers from a fatal illness such as cancer or leukemia, and if so, abortion would be unlikely to prolong, much less save life. So to save the life of a mother, that doesn't happen. Basically does not happen anymore with modern medicine. So that is just an argument that should be pushed to the side. Like that doesn't happen anymore. It's 2018. Next.
Okay.
Yeah, and although there are very peculiar, rare cases where the only way to save the mother's life is by aborting the child in the womb. Um, you're right. We're still talking about less than 1%, um, which is almost non-existent to compare to the number of abortions that we have every year. Um, and even with that being said, the one that I know of can happen. I had a family member go through this. Um, the When it was still an embryo, her body did not identify it as part of herself, so it treated it as a foreign object, and it's
Yeah,
kept
that's
sending
indetermination.
antibodies. Right, and they gave her medications that were supposed to help her body accept it being there. She
Yeah.
proved to be allergic to it.
Okay.
So taking it was going to kill her. Not taking it was going to kill her. That was
No,
the
I think it would have just killed the baby. It wouldn't have killed her.
No, because what happens is that, especially because if there's still development, you're still talking about 4 pounds of mass of tissue, heart, muscle, at that point, cardiovascular system that is now decaying inside her womb. Like the baby was already going to die. That was not going to change. But if they did not get it out of her, um, the decaying tissue was going to go back and circulate into her blood system, which would cause blood poisoning, which would kill her. So, but they couldn't wait for after the actual death because it was already starting to decay. So they had to act quick to get this thing out of her before blood poisoning set in, because that does permanent damage to your heart, your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, your brain, all sorts of nasty stuff.
So the baby was kind of decaying alive. That's so sad.
Yeah, and if you think about just that part of the statement, that is terrible to think about by itself. That this baby was alive; it can physically feel things, and yet it's muscle tissue was decaying and its heart was rupturing from the inside, and their
Yeah.
options were to not give her medicine for it and let it continue and then take out what was left hoping it would save my cousin's life, or give her a pill that she turned out to be allergic to. So
Yeah. That's not even really the same thing because her body was already kind of killing the baby. You know what I mean?
yes, but in the medical system they considered that an abortion. So, but that's what they're talking about when they talk about medically necessary abortions, is situations like what my cousin went through.
Yeah, but that's extremely rare because I know my
Yes,
mom. There was that kind of situation because we have different incompatible blood types, so she had to take some medication to protect me while I was developing and all that stuff. But she had no problem with the medication. Um,
exactly. And these medications are designed so that people should not be allergic to them. It just so happened that she was one of the 1 in 100,000 million, some ridiculously large number that was.
yeah,
So,
and I'm
yeah,
sure those situations are so rare that they don't really get to try the medicine out on that many people anyway. You know?
exactly.
All right, let's get into the next one. Their other argument was about free healthcare for low income people, but
Gosh,
that's another debate.
why are we talking about this?
Yes.
Oh, I do want to point out though before we go to the next topic that most pro-life activists, including in the legislature, do not argue that if it is medically necessary to save the life of the mother, that we should not abort whatever's inside, regardless of how we view it of life. If it is necessary to save the mom, it is her choice whether or
Yeah,
not she gets
the
saved and the baby lives, if that's an option, or if they save her.
yeah, the goal is to save both.
Yes,
And then if you can't, you save the mother. But the goal is always to save both.
yes.
That's right. Damn right. All right. Next one. So I'm going to read it and then preach a little bit and give my response. Here it is. One question for you, Philip. Do you eat meat? You know where this is going to be going. My reply was animals, or she says, animals have been proven to have a consciousness, so to say that they don't matter, they're just a food source, is hypocritical, and therefore you lose all credibility in my argument. I said animals are basically a food source, they can be our friends, they can be a lot of things, but they're there for us to eat. We're animals too. And we are, our mind is more evolved, and we have sentience. And just because they do have a consciousness too, I lose all credibility? No, I don't. And she goes on. My bet is that if you had to carry a child for 9 months and go through all that we go through while pregnant and giving birth, if dot dot dot, if you'd been raped, you might think otherwise. The point here is that the world is already overpopulated with unwanted, abused, and neglected children, and it shouldn't be a woman's right to choose. It should be a woman's right to choose to terminate or not. So first of all, that was debunked in a previous comment about the world being overpopulated. Right now, a study a few years ago said that right now at this time, everyone on this planet can have 5 acres of land. So that's BS.
I hate that argument.
Yeah.
And I really, if you believe that, if those are your beliefs, start with yourself, you know, but they never want to do that. Stop forcing your beliefs on other people and live it out yourself.
There's more. I'm sure the cow or pig you eat would have strong opinions on taking their life for your consumption without their say as well. So I'm not lecturing cows and pigs, eating them, they wouldn't like it. So I'm not lecturing you on what you should or shouldn't do as a diet. Do not lecture women on what they should or shouldn't do with their bodies, especially if your argument isn't valid. So one, my argument is valid, and animals are here for our pleasure, our food source. No, not that kind of pleasure, and our food.
Maybe you're in New Zealand.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I don't care what women do with their bodies. It's illegal to murder. It's immoral to murder a life.
It's not your body, it's a foreign body. So
Yeah.
And not to mention, we already afford more protection to our own species then, and actually, no, I have to counteract my own argument. We provide more protection to other species more than we do for our own. We have endangered conservatism, where if there's a low population of an animal, we legalize the hunting of it. We try to spend millions, if not billions, of dollars to save that species, even if it does nothing for the environment, purely so that it doesn't go extinct.
A good example on that, in California, where me and Veronica live, if you go down I-5 to LA, or leaving LA, depending on your point of view, you see a bunch of signs on the farm saying this is a Congress-created dust bowl and blame Nancy Pelosi boxer. Basically, like Cody said, they're protecting, I think, a fish or something stupid like that. And to protect that, they're not going to allow building more efficient water systems to the farms.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, another thing, it's kind of hard to argue that animals and humans are different when when you have all these when you have all these old women who are childless and referring to their cats as their children. So I think they kind of forget that
And
human people are different.
And a perfect example to the irony of this, just north of where I grew up at in Texas, there was a farm that imported gazelle from Africa that were endangered and guaranteed, I think it was 150 acres of his farm, his own personally owned land, to breeding and just letting these creatures get more and more of them and then sending them back to Africa so that they could repopulate there as well. He was trying to help save the species. Unfortunately, that's stupidly expensive. You have to have food source for them. You have to clean the water tables, all this other stuff. So he would charge local hunters a ridiculous fee to go hunt one or two of these things. He managed to turn 50 of them into 40,000. He almost single-handedly saved that species until the left showed up and said, "This is wrong. You can't do this. You're hurting these creatures and you're destroying these animals." And they actually managed to shut the farm down. It was the worst thing that ever happened to them because they are now extinct.
Wow.
Because he was no longer allowed to have hunters come hunt them. And because he couldn't hunt them, he couldn't afford to keep keeping them up as livestock, to keep helping them breed, to keep them fed and watered. And again, we're talking about more than 40,000 of these gazelles. And he ended up having to ship them all back to Africa, where they were almost immediately all hunted and killed.
Hmm.
Illegally,
That
of course.
that's very sad, but that's also hilarious. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, and even as a kid, I still think I have a couple of pictures of this laying around somewhere. Um, for the most part, because they're non-violent and they're herbivores, you could actually drive through parts of the ranch where these things were, and it was so cool to see a almost like a drive-through zoo of these animals that were not here in the continent. And some of them would walk right up to you and like be playful, especially the little kid ones. Like I don't know what they call a baby gazelle, but I remember when I was like 12, one of them came up to me and we were just like kind of like roughhousing and playing and stuff. And this was a wild animal. So, but now that whole ranch is gone.
it's just another example of how leftism makes no sense. They don't have a real understanding. I mean, they're getting so hung up on you're letting hunters hunt two or three so that the 40,000 can survive. But
Hmm.
they'll narrative of how it's horrible that they're killing these beautiful creatures. It's just like game hunting in Africa. You know, those people pay a lot of money to go and do that, and they hunt their few, and all like the thousands of dollars they spent help the conservation efforts for years and years to come. You know,
Yep.
um, they're short sighted. They're focused on this little talking point, and it does not. I don't really know if they. I don't really know what outcome they want. Like I don't know if they want the outcome that they say they want, and they're just too ignorant or blinded by their own narrative that they can't see that their way is not going to get them there, or do they really not want that? So they're just deceiving everyone. It's really hard to, at this point, to know if they're ignorant, if they're misguided or deceived, or if they're stupid, or if they're malicious.
Mhm.
It's
And
very odd.
so I'm going to pull this quote straight from the article. The leader of the conservation and management group out in Texas, in response to the movement that tried to shut down this ranch, said that the hunting of these animals is a necessary evil to ensure the survival of the many. A sacrifice of the few will ensure the survival of the species, and allowing it is something that should be constitutionally given. The response to which the leader of this group that tried to shut down the ranch said that it is better to let this species go extinct than to let somebody hunt it.
That's stupid.
Oh God.
It's really
So,
really interesting how the left is with animals versus how they are with people. With people, it's, oh, we're overpopulated. Well, we shouldn't make any more people anyway. But then it's like, oh my gosh, this poor frog.
And another thing about that, I told her that the birth rate in a lot of countries is at low levels, and some are dangerous levels, like Germany and Japan. So we're going to be pretty fine with the world population.
yeah. And not to mention, I think it's 78%. I may be wrong here by about 5%, but about 78% of the food that we have, whether it's at the farm being made, at the stores being sold, or in your home being thrown away, 78% of everything we produce gets turned into waste. Not like eaten and gone down the drain, but gets thrown in the garbage, is unusable, cannot be eaten, cannot be shipped. 78%. That includes crops too.
Wow.
I
So
see that on the side of the road.
yeah, even though we're extremely inefficient, just for the sheer fact that there are so many things involved with growing livestock and crops, even so inefficient, we can still feed the population twice over just for what we're growing right now.
Now
Yeah.
that's efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also highly I mean, that's, if you really think about what she's saying, kill this child to make room for me. You know, that's that's disgusting.
Actually,
Yeah.
that's a good point, and it's also kind of terrible that yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Let's get into the next part. This is where it gets really social justice warrior level 9,000. If you're a DBZ fan, you'll get that one. So one of her new friends popped in the conversation and said, "Wow, is me, a flat Earth tool, or is the Earth flat too? Say what you want, but I have lost interest with your side of this argument." The friend's name. I'm sorry we have to deal with this type of mindset when it comes to the abortion debate, and sadly, it seems more due to opinionated men. It just, you guys got that last part right. It just means that we have to keep trying and keep speaking up. I like, I do like that this thread shows the importance of having a solid argument and having all the right pieces to back it up. You had no evidence. You didn't have any good arguments. You did stupid left wing politics, no sources, and you ignored science. And you said murder was okay. So you are full of crap. I
Did
should
you
have
say
said
that?
that. No, I should have. So going
Should
on. Oh, go ahead.
should have told you to say it earlier. It was pretty rough. It was pretty rough though. Yeah. But I that's another leftist tactic, is that she completely disregarded your argument and just called you a name. Oh, so are you a flat earther too? That's, so she's calling you stupid and saying that everyone should disregard your argument.
Okay.
So that was, it's an effective point of argument, but it's actually not accurate. You can't just, and
Yes,
I
I'm
think
a
we
man, but
yeah,
I
but we
do
need
know more about Plan B than you do, obviously, and what's a
but we
life.
yeah, it's because I disagree with you doesn't mean you can call me names and
I
and
mean,
ignore my, she lost interest in your, she didn't have any interest in your argument because her mind was already made up and she wasn't going to hear anything anyway. And then what did she say? Some then she.
Oh, let me read it. It says the part
Oh,
that
then.
you kind of hated. Yeah.
Oh, what you want me to read? What I wrote?
Oh no, I didn't read. I didn't send that one. I was trying to keep it civil. Veronica had a great comment that I could have used to tear her apart, but I wanted to be respectful because it's a friend that I see on a regular basis. Her friends joined in, and that's when it got all dramatic. It's when
Yeah,
I.
and I didn't care. But I love the virtue signaling with the whole. I'm sorry, I have to deal with this type of mindset. First, that's condescending,
Mhm.
and it's belittling, and it's virtue signaling. Like, oh, like I'm sorry that there are people like this, and then she's being extremely sexist because she basically said, oh, it's usually opinionated men. Okay, well, you're an opinionated female. Now what? Great,
Mhm.
we've tried results. Now what? You want an ice cream? You want a trophy? Um, and it was kind of funny that she said it was important to have a solid argument and have the right pieces to back it up. That's right. But she did not have a solid argument and she didn't have any of the right pieces to back it up. And she is blind to that, which is sad.
Mhm.
So, you guys have already experienced this quite a bit. I tend to fight audacities with logic, just like I do everything else. The more logical, cold, and direct the response I can give, the more profound an effect that it seems to have on people. And in this particular case, her argument was only necessary if she was a 5-year-old. Um, uh, you're rubber, I'm glue, or you're glue, I'm rubber. Whatever you say bounces off me. Six back to you. But my response every time I hear something like that, oh, I'm sorry you feel this way, but you're a sexist or a racist or whatever it happens to be. In this case, an opinionated male with man spreading. Um, to this is my response. I am very sorry that you feel that is who I am. It is not who I am. I would love to have an intellectual conversation with you and discuss the differences in our opinion instead of just shouting which one has the worst of the two. And I
I
have
don't.
put that up on my Facebook. I have put that up on our Twitter for the Conservative Coalition. I have said that to people that have commented to me in stores and other things. And to that, they never have a response because they're not interested in an intellectual conversation. They're not interested in having a debate. They're interested in saying, you're an evil, terrible person because you don't share my views. And that's as far as they can get. They're unfortunately to say, because I do live with a liberal who's incredibly intelligent. People like this are the reason that people like him are looked down on. Because liberals as a whole in the face of the media have shown themselves to be just dumb and violent. And that's as far as they get.
Yep. Let's get into their next point. I'll read their comment addressing me, then I'll read mine, and this will be the end. Your friend Philip, me, can't get pregnant, so there is no argument or debate. You don't need to answer his question about which week abortion is okay or not okay. It doesn't matter. You believe what you want, and he can believe what he wants. Well, there's the truth and reality, and there's believing in BS. I go with science. Anyway, she continues. He's a bored shit talker. Uh oh, I want to get demonetized. Who thinks he's having a friendly debate. It was until you and your friends got in. It was very good. She goes on. Also, vote everyone. Virtue signaling. This might be not be a issue going forward, and men and women might be able to control their own bodies. Imagine that. My reply was, oh my god, profanities during a friendly debate, does this make you feel better? Just because I'm a man makes me wrong? Whoever reads this, remember that I will always be respectful, or that I was respectful and did not use any profanities, and even cited sources and went off facts. Facts don't care about your feelings.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah. I like, that's, I don't know if you guys know this. That's just a very female thing to do. It's like you get in between your friend and some other person. You're like, don't listen to them. And then you do your spiel, um, and then you kind of just remove them from the situation. That's a very female thing to do.
Mhm.
Um, uh, but yeah, the name calling is rude because you didn't call her any names, but it's just petty. Like Cody said, it's petty and childish, and it's name calling and oh you're a boogerhead, to try to distract from from the argument and to just say, well, you believe what you want and I'll believe what I want. Oh, well, then why was there a discussion? And then the whole go vote because they might take away our right to do whatever with our body. No, it's not your body. Like we've been through that. It's not your body. And you have lots of choices. And self-control is not one of them to but it totally is a choice. That you choose not to take. And all they want is, like I said before, is to escape the consequences of their actions. They want consequence-free living.
Mhm.
Um, very immature. That's not how adults should be. And it's really interesting. They don't really go into a they don't really get to the point where you can argue for parenthood or adoption. But if you talk to someone and say, "Oh, well, you could just not have sex," like that's not even to them that is not an option. So they actually give you fewer choices for being pro-choice. But when you say that, it's like they look at you like you have two heads. Like, what? Don't do that. But how can you not? You're not gonna die if you don't. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And even still, I mean, they talk so much about sex education and how it's so amazing. It's kind of hard to get pregnant, like there's only a small amount of time in which it can happen. um, it's not that hard to avoid, even if you want to be sexually active. Like there's timing. There's lots of things that you can do. And I think that our side promotes all of those choices rather than um, focusing on I can be responsible and do whatever I want and not think about consequences, because if something happens I'll just kill it.
Mhm. And all their
Something.
arguments are based on feelings, not facts or personal responsibility. And when you debate people, you need to make sure that you are polite, giving the facts, and expressing your opinion well to deliver those facts to the leftist.
Yeah. I think that the one dirty word, because liberals and leftists more than liberals, they like to be profane. The one dirty word to them is personal responsibility.
Ooh, yeah.
It is.
Ow.
Do you have
So
anything to add?
yeah, so as far as their argument that because you're a man you can't uh, have an opinion on abortion, well,
Just sexist.
okay, yeah, I mean, for one, yeah, that's incredibly sexist. For two, it takes two to tango. Just because you are carrying the result of a night out or a relationship or a marriage after the fact does not mean that the man is also responsible for that. And they argue that all the time, that a man has to be responsible even if he doesn't want to be. And I agree, we should. That being said, if you're going to make a man financially responsible and morally obligated to take care of a child, even if the woman is the one who doesn't want him there, he should also have a say in whether or not that baby lives. Especially if he says, "I want this baby to live. It is my child." And we've talked about this before on the Discord, so I'm not going to get into details here, but we both know that I'm a little bit, or was a little bit of a man hoe. I've slept around and not proud of that fact. But with as many women and men that I've been with, I have never gotten anyone pregnant. and none of them have ever gotten pregnant on accident. So you're going to tell me that it's not my choice after it was your choice and my choice. In a tango, if there is a leader and a follower, there is someone who leads the dance and there is someone who follows the movements. If one of them, either one of them, decides they're going to do their own thing, they're going to fall flat on their face and it's going to hurt. And it's the same argument here.
And I think that one thing that the left does inaccurately is that they talk about, well, you want to force parenthood, or they talk a lot about forcing people. Nobody on the right is trying to force parenthood. We're trying to encourage you to own up to your responsibilities and maybe grow up and mature and turn into a better human being. However, we really push adoption. Like, you don't we don't force parenthood on the man or the woman. Like, yes, of course, it would be great if you guys were adults and owned up to your responsibilities. Um, but if you're not going to do that, then adoption. But there's nobody on the right trying to force men to, support that child for forever. Um, and there's no one trying to force the woman to be a mother. It's like, just give birth to it and hand it off.
Yeah.
You know.
And
But
the one thing that I would agree with them on, adoption is not easy. Both giving up your child and more so getting and adopting a child is incredibly difficult.
yeah,
I have a family friend and his wife who tried to adopt. Between the two of them, they make more than 80,000 a year. They own a house. They own 2 cars. They're well educated. No mental illnesses. All the right things to be parents of the utmost ability. And they got denied 6 years in a row to adopt a child.
Wow.
yeah,
So if
it
they're
is.
going to argue that orphanages are overflowing and that there's already too many children that are not taken care for in this world, maybe they should be focusing more on fixing the adoption process than they should on letting women abort the children they have inside them.
I agree, and I have known people also who they ran into problems adopting when the agency found out they were religious, and then like everything was
Yeah.
going great. Like, oh well, we don't want to give a kid to a religious couple, God forbid, and I adoption is way too expensive. So definitely that needs reform. But adoption in itself is a beautiful thing. Um, Reform the system, yes, but that doesn't mean that adoption isn't a better option than abortion.
Yeah, and we covered this more in our last video with adoption statistics. You could look at that. But we're going to have to end this stream so YouTube doesn't split it into multiple videos and you won't watch it anyway. But I like to, and regarding Cody's Playboy past, he's a man of God now, and he gave up his sinful ways.
I'm a heathen. I'm a heretic.
Oh Lord.
But I like to thank both of you for coming on. It was last minute, and we really dive deep into how leftists think. And I hope this will help you, the listener or viewer, to really try to understand their arguments and combat them with facts and logic and what they hate the most, personal responsibility.
And most importantly, regardless of your political stance, your ideologies, your viewpoints, your differences with the people around you and the people in your community, the one thing that remains important: stay American.
MAGA. I'm with the lovely Veronica. Want to say something?
Nope. I've said everything I need to say. Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Yes. All right.